You thought silence would pull her back to you, the way old stories say absence sharpens longing. Days pass, weeks blur. She doesn't crack. Life rolls on as if you never existed. You spiral, scrolling her pages, asking why it feels like she's winning, because she never lost anything. Here's the sting and the doorway. You weren't ignored because silence failed. You were ignored because silence without weight is just empty space. People swear silence is powerful, that if you disappear, she'll miss you. They lied. Silence without value is absence. Absence without value is invisible. This isn't about tricks or games. It's about reprogramming the man you are, building a presence that commands attention, so when you withdraw, the room remembers. If you're ready to stop chasing and start becoming, start this journey now. Like and subscribe to Stoic Silence and turn on notifications. Engage with me below. I read every comment because your story sharpens the brotherhood. Drop a 1 if you once believed going quiet would make her miss you. Drop a 2 if you're ready to build the kind of presence that makes your silence thunder. Hold your breath for what comes next, because we're about to open the door you've avoided. The 5 brutal reasons your silence isn't working, and the precise moves to put the power back in your hands. 1. She expects you to chase. She isn't confused by your silence. She anticipated it. The moment you stopped calling, stopped posting, stopped showing up, she knew exactly what was happening. You thought your silence would spark curiosity, that it would ignite reflection or guilt. But she saw it coming long before you did, because she's lived this cycle before. She's seen men like you go quiet, not out of peace, but out of panic. She knows that your silence isn't detachment, it's hope disguised as restraint. While you sit there in the quiet, waiting for her to notice your absence, she already knows your pattern. Every reaction, every emotion, every desperate attempt to prove your worth without words. You think you're being mysterious, but to her, you're predictable. She can feel your energy still reaching for her even when your voice is gone. And because of that, she doesn't feel your absence. She feels your orbit, circling, waiting, hesitating. She's seen this play before. The man who disappears for attention, who calls it self-control but spends his nights checking her stories. The man who mistakes waiting for strength, silence for progress, and restraint for power. You call it self-respect, but she sees through it. She knows that deep down, you're still waiting for her to notice, and that's exactly why she doesn't. Because silence built on expectation isn't silence at all. It's noise without sound. You were raised to believe that persistence equals love, that proving your worth earns affection, that chasing is noble. Since childhood, you were taught to fight for love, to show effort, to convince. But here's the truth. The more you chase, the smaller you become in her eyes. The more you explain, the less she listens. You made her the prize, and in doing so, you forgot your own value. You've been living your life as if her approval defines your worth. And the moment you started chasing her validation, you lost the only thing that ever made you attractive, your calm independence. She doesn't feel your absence because she still feels your energy orbiting her. Every look at her profile, every thought about what she's doing, every emotional replay of what went wrong, she can feel all of it. You think she's not aware, but women sense energy more than words. She knows you're still there. She knows you haven't moved on. She knows you haven't changed. You haven't reclaimed your power. You've just paused your pursuit, waiting for her to turn around. That's not detachment. It's dependency wearing a mask. The Stoic answer isn't to chase her or to wait for her. It's to detach completely. Not as a tactic to manipulate her attention, but as a declaration of inner rebirth. Detachment doesn't mean silence, it means peace. It means you no longer need her recognition to validate your worth. It means your energy, once scattered by emotion, is now redirected toward your mission, your discipline, your evolution. When you embrace this kind of silence, it doesn't come from fear, it comes from mastery. True Stoicism teaches that power is found not in controlling others, but in mastering yourself. The day you stop hoping she'll notice is the day you begin to rise. Because that's when your silence stops being weakness and becomes a weapon. When your silence is backed by growth, when you start improving your body, your mind, your focus, it becomes impossible for her to ignore. You stop being a background character in her story and become the man she can no longer define. The moment your silence transforms into self-respect, she begins to feel something new, uncertainty. And that uncertainty is the first crack in her illusion of control. She won't understand it at first. She'll wonder why the man who once chased her no longer responds, why his eyes no longer reveal weakness, why his energy feels untouchable. She'll start to sense the distance, not the kind created by time, but the kind forged by transformation. And here's the irony. She'll start to think about you the moment you stop thinking about her, because people only chase what they can't predict. And the man who no longer seeks her validation becomes unpredictable. The man who no longer reacts becomes mysterious. The man who no longer waits becomes powerful. When your silence is no longer about her, it becomes the reflection of something greater: discipline, purpose, evolution. That's when everything changes. She'll feel your absence not through your words, but through your indifference. Not through what you post, but through what you no longer need. Not through your attention, but through your transformation. Because the moment you shift from waiting for her to working on yourself, the dynamic reverses. The same silence that once looked like surrender now feels like dominance. The same quiet that once came from pain now radiates peace. You stop trying to prove and start becoming. You stop chasing validation and start chasing mastery. You stop explaining and start living. Your silence begins to speak the only language that truly commands respect: growth. And when she finally feels that shift, when she realizes that you've moved beyond her emotional reach, she'll start to question herself. She'll remember your presence not because you demanded it, but because you withdrew it completely. She'll feel that absence in the quiet moments, in the spaces where your attention used to live. And by then, it won't matter. Because you'll be too far ahead, too focused, too evolved. You'll have turned silence into substance and solitude into strength. You'll no longer care who notices, because your life itself will speak louder than any message ever could. That's the paradox of Stoic silence. It only works when it's no longer about her. When your silence is fueled by peace, not pain, she feels it more deeply than any words could ever reach. And that's when your story shifts from chasing her to chasing greatness, because in the end, she expected you to chase, but she never expected you to rise. 2. Your silence feels weak. Silence without conviction is nothing more than hesitation. You tell yourself you're being strong, that restraint equals power. But deep down you know the truth. You're still waiting. You hold back the message, fight the urge to call, stare at her profile at midnight, convincing yourself that self-control means progress. But real silence, Stoic silence, doesn't come from fear or waiting. It comes from a man who has already let go. She can feel your energy long before you ever speak. Women don't need words to detect weakness. They sense hesitation, the subtle tension of a man still emotionally tied. You can stop talking to her, but you can't fake indifference. Your silence, instead of being a boundary, becomes a signal. It tells her you're still hoping, still orbiting, still giving her power without realizing it. She knows you're not gone, you're paused. She knows that one text from her could bring you back in an instant. And that's why she doesn't feel your silence, because it's not rooted in certainty. It's not the silence of a man who has mastered himself. It's the silence of a man who's holding his breath, waiting for a sign that never comes. You think by saying nothing you'll make her miss you, but silence born from fear is transparent. It's the kind of quiet that reveals everything you're trying to hide. You think you're unreadable, but she can read you more clearly than ever. She sees your hesitation. She feels your emotional noise even through the absence of your voice. That's not strength. That's quiet desperation. A man who waits is still chained. A man who watches is still ruled. You can't call it detachment when every thought still belongs to her. You can't call it power when you still measure your worth through her reaction. That's not self-control. It's submission disguised as patience. You see, silence by itself is not power. Power comes from the intention behind it. When your silence comes from fear, it's fragile. When it comes from peace, it's unstoppable. You can't fake that kind of energy. A woman can feel the difference between a man who is done and a man who's pretending. The first radiates calm, the second leaks tension. And tension never attracts. It only reassures her that she still controls the game. She feels at ease knowing you're still watching, still caring, still waiting. Your restraint comforts her. It tells her she doesn't have to act because you're still emotionally available. You may think your silence is creating mystery, but it's actually giving her security. She knows where you stand. She knows you'll respond if she wants you to. She knows you haven't moved on. And that certainty kills attraction faster than any words ever could. That's the paradox most men never understand. Silence without strength is weakness, but silence with peace is magnetic. The goal isn't to stop talking, it's to stop waiting. The Stoic man doesn't use silence to manipulate emotions. He uses it to master them. When you remove the need for a reaction, your silence stops being hollow. It gains weight, it carries gravity. It says, I no longer need to prove, explain, or convince. Absence is different from silence. Silence is when you stop speaking but still care. Absence is when you withdraw completely, emotionally and mentally. Absence means your energy no longer orbits her world. It means your focus has returned to where it belongs, your own. When your silence transforms into absence, you stop checking who views your stories, stop replaying old conversations, stop waiting for the what if. You stop living for her reaction and start living for your evolution. That's when everything shifts. Because a man who truly disappears doesn't do it for validation. He does it for liberation. He understands that peace isn't found in her response. It's found in his purpose. When you detach completely, you no longer need her acknowledgement. You no longer crave closure. You begin to move differently. Your silence starts to sound like focus. Your absence starts to look like growth. And that's when she begins to feel it. Not your words, not your waiting, but your change. A woman may not understand why, but she'll sense the difference immediately. When a man's silence comes from power, it unsettles her. She starts to wonder what shifted, what she no longer controls. The same quiet that once looked like hesitation now feels like confidence. The same distance that once felt like uncertainty now feels like dominance. Because when your calm becomes absolute, it forces her to reflect. You're no longer predictable, you're no longer accessible, and unpredictability is what makes her curious again. The Stoics taught that true control begins when you no longer need to control anything outside yourself. That's what your silence must become. Not a waiting room for her return, but a temple for your discipline. Stop using silence as punishment and start using it as protection. Stop holding your breath, hoping she'll reach out. Breathe, reclaim your mind, return to your purpose, Redirect every ounce of energy you once wasted, chasing validation, into building the man you were always meant to be. Because silence without purpose is emptiness. But silence with direction is transformation. The man who embraces that difference becomes dangerous, not because he seeks revenge, but because he no longer needs it. He's too focused on becoming stronger, wiser, calmer. His silence stops being a question and becomes an answer. And that's what she feels. Not the absence of your words, but the presence of your strength. Not the lack of attention, but the abundance of peace. When your silence turns into power, she no longer feels certainty. She feels loss, and that's when she starts to question what she gave up. So don't just go silent. Evolve. Don't just disappear. Transcend. The world respects the man who speaks with results, not excuses. Let your new focus, your new discipline, your new peace be the loudest sound in the room. Because when you master silence, you master yourself. And when you master yourself, everything, including her, begins to move differently around you. That's when she finally feels your absence. That's when she begins to miss what she can no longer control. And that's when your silence stops being weak and becomes unshakable. Because she never feared losing your words, she feared losing your energy. And the moment you stop giving it to her, that's when she truly starts to feel the void. 3. She's not feeling your absence. She doesn't feel your absence because you never gave her anything worth missing. That's the truth most men refuse to face. You thought disappearing would make her chase. That silence alone could create desire, but it didn't. She doesn't feel emptiness. She feels relief. Because what you called love was comfort. And comfort, to a woman who craves contrast, is forgettable. You believed that if you just stopped reaching out, she'd start to wonder, start to miss you. But she doesn't. Because the version of you that left wasn't a man she couldn't replace. It was a man she could predict. You were too available, too consistent, too easy to read. You gave her everything she wanted without ever asking her to earn it. You thought that your consistency proved loyalty, but to her it only confirmed certainty, and certainty kills attraction. A woman only feels the loss of a man who made her world feel different. She only misses the presence that changed her perspective, challenged her emotions, and made her question herself. You didn't bring that. You brought comfort, predictability, and emotional safety, and while those sound noble, they are the very things that make a man forgettable in her mind. Comfort is replaceable. Depth is not. You gave her attention, but not presence. You gave her stability, but not challenge. You became the safe harbor she wanted to escape, the calm that became dull. The truth is, she doesn't miss you because you never became irreplaceable. You became the man she knew she could have, and what is always available loses its value. A woman doesn't crave what she already controls. She craves what she cannot fully understand, what she must earn. So when you went silent, it didn't create a void. It created peace. That's the hardest truth to swallow. Realizing your absence is not a loss, but a relief. You thought your silence would echo in her mind, but silence without impact is just space. Space she'll easily fill with distractions, new faces, or busyness that makes her forget you ever existed. The silence that once haunted you becomes her closure. You can't make her miss you through silence alone. The only way she feels absence is when it follows value. When you've built something in her mind that leaves a mark. If your presence never moved her, your absence won't either. That's why this isn't about disappearing. It's about transforming. To make your absence felt, you must become extraordinary. Not louder, not flashier, stronger, wiser, more grounded. Build a life so rich in meaning that your existence can't be ignored. Because absence only hurts when it removes something unique. Your job now isn't to make her notice your silence. It's to make your silence impossible to ignore. Every man can disappear, but only a few can evolve. The average man goes quiet and waits. The superior man goes silent and builds. While others scroll through her pictures, he's creating a life that no woman can forget. While others look back, he's moving forward so fast that the past can't even catch him. He doesn't chase, he ascends. He doesn't seek attention, he becomes attention. You must understand that a woman doesn't miss men. She misses moments. She misses energy. She misses the version of herself that she felt in your presence. And if that version of her didn't feel inspired, alive, or challenged, then she has nothing to miss. That's why you must become the man who brings energy that can't be replicated, who creates moments that can't be forgotten. Not through noise, not through desperation, but through evolution. Stop trying to be seen. Start becoming undeniable. Stop trying to remind her of who you were. Start showing her, without saying a word, that man no longer exists. Build a body she never touched. Cultivate a focus she never witnessed. Create success she never imagined you could achieve. Because when she realizes that the man she once overlooked has evolved into someone she could never reach, that's when the silence starts to speak. Your silence, when backed by transformation, becomes thunder. She'll hear it in your absence, in your composure, in the way you move forward with purpose. You'll stop being a ghost, lingering in her memory, and become a force that reshapes her perception of you. That's when she begins to feel it. Not because you're gone, but because the man she thought she knew no longer exists. When your growth outpaces her expectations, your silence turns from weakness to power. She'll see it in your discipline, in your peace, in the way you no longer respond to what once triggered you. She'll feel it in the shift of your energy, steady, focused, untouchable. The man who once needed her now walks like he needs nothing. That's when she starts to question herself. She'll replay moments, not because of nostalgia, but confusion. How did the man who once revolved around her become so centered, so calm, so beyond reach? That question will haunt her. Because while you were rebuilding yourself in silence, she was still playing the same game, waiting for you to break it. But you didn't. You broke free. The Stoics believed that true power lies in self-mastery, the ability to remain unmoved by what once controlled you. That's the level you must reach. Don't try to make her miss you. Make her understand that you've outgrown the version of yourself who once needed her attention. That's the difference between a man who disappears and a man who ascends. When your silence becomes a reflection of your evolution, the narrative changes. You're no longer the man who's waiting to be remembered. You're the man who's become unforgettable through transformation. She'll feel that absence, not in loneliness, but in realization. The realization that she underestimated you, that she lost a man not because he vanished, but because he evolved beyond her reach. And by the time she feels it, it won't matter anymore. Because you'll be living in a world where her validation is irrelevant. Your purpose, your mission, your discipline, they will have replaced the need for her approval. The man who once begged to be seen will now walk through life unseen, but felt the quiet presence of a man who doesn't need to prove anything anymore. Because in the end, she's not feeling your absence yet, but she will. The moment your silence is no longer an escape, but a statement. The moment your growth becomes undeniable. The moment your peace becomes louder than her noise. That's when she'll feel it, deep, sharp, and irreversible. Not because you disappeared, but because the man she took for granted no longer exists, and that's when silence becomes power. 4. You haven't changed. Time doesn't change you. Discipline does. You tell yourself that if you wait long enough, she'll remember the good times and miss you. You think distance will do the work for you, but she won't, because you're still the same man she walked away from. Time doesn't transform anyone. It only reveals what you choose to do with it. And the truth is, most men spend their time waiting instead of rebuilding. She knows your patterns better than you think. She knows your habits, your weaknesses, your comfort zones. She knows exactly what will happen if she sends a simple "hey" or reacts to one of your stories. You'll answer. You'll melt. You'll rush to show her that you've been waiting all along. That's why she doesn't fear losing you, because she knows she hasn't. She knows she could walk back into your life at any moment and find the same version of you still standing there, hoping she'll return. You've mistaken patience for progress. You call it no contact, but it's just waiting in disguise. You call it healing, but you're still watching her, still wondering, still replaying what went wrong. You think silence equals growth, but 6 months of silence means nothing if you return unchanged. Growth isn't about the length of your absence. It's about the depth of your transformation. Every day you spend checking her profile, scrolling through old photos, or imagining her next move, you stay frozen in the past. She doesn't miss you because she doesn't have to. You haven't evolved into someone she could miss. You haven't given her a new version of you to think about. You're still stuck in the same story she decided to end. She's not haunted by the silence because she knows exactly who's on the other side of it. The same man she walked away from. And that's the painful truth most men avoid. Time doesn't heal attraction. Evolution does. You can wait a year, you can wait 10, but if you come back as the same man, she'll see right through it. Time can only change how long you've been idle. It can't change who you are. The only thing that separates the man who's forgotten from the man who's respected is what he does with the silence. Change isn't about waiting. It's about movement. It's about building discipline, structure, and purpose when no one is watching. It's about creating a new version of yourself that commands respect through action, not words. If you want her to notice something different, you must first become someone different. Work, train, learn, build, create. Not for her approval, but for your redemption. Because real power is quiet, and transformation is the loudest kind of silence. The man who rebuilds himself doesn't chase validation. He's too focused on becoming valuable. He doesn't stalk her stories. He writes his own. He doesn't measure his worth by how long he can resist reaching out. He measures it by how far he can go without needing to. When you start living like that, everything shifts. You stop trying to make her regret, and you start making yourself proud. Imagine her one day scrolling through your profile, not out of curiosity, but confusion. She sees a man unrecognizable, confident, focused, moving with purpose. The man she remembers was needy, reactive, uncertain. The man she sees now is grounded, calm, and complete. That's when she'll feel something she hasn't felt before, uncertainty. Because when you evolve beyond her expectations, she starts to question her decision. She wonders if she underestimated you. She wonders if she walked away from someone who found himself without her. But that moment only comes when you stop living in the past. As long as your energy is tied to what she thinks, you'll stay small. You'll stay stuck in that old story. You can't move forward while constantly glancing back. The Stoics taught that freedom comes from detachment, not from people, but from outcomes. The man who grows doesn't hope for a reaction. He finds meaning in the process itself. He becomes his own source of validation. Every rep in the gym, every early morning, every night spent building instead of reminiscing, that's what changes you. Not time, not waiting, not silence. Action, discipline, purpose. That's what separates the man she left from the man she could never forget. You see, she doesn't miss the man who stood still. She misses the man who outgrew her reach. But by the time she realizes that, you'll be too far ahead to look back. And that's the paradox. When you truly change, her attention no longer matters. You stop needing closure because you've already written your own ending. You stop caring about her approval because your progress has already replaced her opinion. You no longer need her to notice because your life itself becomes the proof. The man who waits for time to change him stays trapped. The man who uses time to forge himself becomes unrecognizable. When she finally looks back and sees the difference, she won't be looking at the man she left. She'll be looking at the man she can never have again. And that's the moment she feels the weight of her decision. But by then, it won't be about revenge. It won't be about proving her wrong. It'll be about knowing you became the kind of man who never needed to be validated by anyone else again. Because the truth is simple. She can't miss what hasn't evolved. If you stay the same, she'll stay indifferent. But if you change, deeply, intentionally, permanently, she'll feel the shift. She'll feel it in your confidence, in your peace, in your silence that no longer seeks to be understood. And when that moment comes, when she realizes the man she once took for granted has become someone untouchable, it won't be you who's waiting anymore, because you haven't just changed. You've transcended. You've turned the waiting into working, the pain into power, the silence into discipline. And that's what makes you unforgettable. Not because she remembers who you were, but because she'll never forget who you became. And that's the lesson time teaches every man who finally stops waiting. It's not time that heals, it's evolution. 5. You're still emotionally tied. You're silent, but she still owns your mind. You've stopped texting, stopped calling, stopped reaching out. But deep down, she hasn't left you. Not really, because you haven't stopped thinking about her. You haven't stopped wondering what she's doing, who she's with, or whether she still remembers you. You've cut contact, but not attachment. And that's why your silence isn't working. She can still feel your energy bending toward her. You see, women don't just listen to words. They sense energy. Even when you say nothing, your focus, your emotions, your fixations still whisper her name. You think you're being strong by holding back, but she can feel that invisible connection pulsing from you. Every time you check her profile, every time you replay old memories, every time you wonder if she misses you, you feed that connection. And as long as that energy exists, she will never feel your absence. Because in truth, she never lost you. You think no contact means control, but it doesn't. Not if your mind still belongs to her. Real detachment isn't physical, it's spiritual. Until your emotions break free, she still holds power. It's not about blocking her number or avoiding her name. It's about reclaiming the space in your head that she still occupies. You can walk away in person, but if she's still the first thought when you wake, and the last thought before you sleep, you haven't truly left. That's why she doesn't miss you. She doesn't have to. Because she still feels you there. A woman can sense when a man's energy still orbits her world. She knows she can reach out at any time and find that familiar softness waiting. She knows that even in silence, she owns your attention. And as long as she knows that, she'll never regret losing you, because she never really did. You're still there, quietly waiting in the background, hoping she notices. That's not power. That's self-imprisonment. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. It means you stop living your life according to her reactions, her silence, her validation. You've been operating under an illusion that by doing nothing you're being stoic. But stoicism is not about suppressing emotions. It's about mastering them. It's about understanding that true freedom doesn't come from avoiding pain, but from facing it until it no longer owns you. And this is where most men fail. They think silence equals strength, but their silence is filled with noise, anxiety, obsession, longing. Their mind becomes a battlefield of what-ifs. They replay her last words, decode her last text, imagine her next move. They're silent, yes, but they're not still. And until you find stillness, your silence means nothing. She doesn't miss you because she doesn't feel a void, and she doesn't feel a void because you're still energetically present. That's the paradox. You can vanish physically, but your energy betrays you. Every time you wonder if she's thinking about you, every time you react to her posts or to your memories, you keep the door open, and as long as that door stays open, she will never knock. To truly let go, you have to sever the invisible thread that keeps pulling you back. Cut it clean. Remove her from your thoughts the way a warrior releases his past battles, without resentment, without longing, without looking back. Because the past is not your home anymore. You can't live there and expect peace. You can't heal while still romanticizing what hurt you. The Stoic man doesn't erase his emotions, he reclaims them. He feels the pain, but he doesn't worship it. He remembers the lessons, not the longing. He understands that attachment is the root of suffering, and that freedom only comes when he detaches not from the woman, but from the outcome. Because real peace isn't found in getting her back. It's found in not needing her back at all. When you finally stop waiting for her to notice, when your silence stops being a strategy and becomes a state of strength, that's when the energy shifts. The moment you stop reacting, she starts reflecting. The moment you stop needing, she starts doubting. The moment you become untouchable, she starts to feel the weight of what she lost. Because when a man's energy no longer bends toward her, it disrupts her sense of control. It's the one thing she never expected, your complete indifference. And that indifference is what shakes her more than any message ever could. When you reach a point where she could text, call, or show up, and you wouldn't flinch, that's when your silence becomes power. That's when it transforms from avoidance to dominance. Because nothing disturbs a person more than realizing they no longer have the influence they once had. But here's the beautiful irony. By the time she finally feels your absence, you won't care. Because you'll have found something far greater than her. Peace. You'll have redirected your energy towards something that actually gives back. Your discipline, your purpose, your mission. You'll no longer be reacting to her world. You'll be building your own. You'll look back one day and realize that the bond you thought was unbreakable was nothing more than an illusion, a reflection of your own fear of letting go. The truth is, the world belongs to the man who masters detachment. When you stop chasing closure, the universe gives you clarity. When you stop waiting, opportunities appear. When you stop clinging, you finally move. Detachment is not coldness, it's confidence. It's the realization that your peace is sacred, and no one has the right to live rent-free in your mind. Letting go completely isn't weakness, it's evolution. It's the moment you choose self-respect over nostalgia, progress over pain, peace over chaos. When you reach that level of stillness, she'll feel your absence like a shift in the air, not because you punished her with silence, but because your energy is no longer hers to claim. And when she finally senses that loss, when she realizes that the man who once revolved around her now moves on his own axis, she'll test you, she'll send a message, she'll like your post, she'll try to see if she still has power. But when you don't respond, not out of spite, but out of indifference, that's when the truth hits her. She lost you long ago. Because the man she used to know would have jumped at her attention. The man you've become doesn't need it. And that difference, that quiet strength, is what makes your silence louder than ever. So stop feeding the connection that keeps you small. Stop letting her live in your head. Walk away completely, not in body but in spirit. Because the moment you reclaim your energy, your focus, your peace, she'll feel your absence in every corner of her world. But you won't care, because you'll have already moved beyond needing to be missed. You'll have become untouchable, the kind of man whose silence doesn't beg to be noticed, but commands to be respected. And that's when you win, not when she returns, but when you no longer need her to. You thought silence would make her miss you, but silence was never the weapon. You were. Your growth, your peace, your purpose, those are what she truly feels when they're gone. So stop waiting, stop hoping, stop orbiting the idea of her. Walk forward, build the life she could never imagine being part of, because the goal was never to make her chase. The goal was to make yourself impossible to forget. Join the brotherhood of Stoic silence. Subscribe, step into the calm, and start rebuilding from within. Because the real power isn't in being heard, it's in becoming unshakable.